from Tiffany Hayes fans over on Threads that has now made its way to X and has a lot of people asking questions of the WNBA, the Indiana Fever, Cathy Engelbert. What's going on right now? We got to remember something. The Indiana Fever never apologized for calling their fans racist or insinuating they were racist during the Angel Reese racist fiasco investigation. Anybody remember that?
The NBA, the Indiana Fever, and the league's commissioner, Cathy Engelbert, are all facing pointed questions following the Tiffany Hayes social media situation involving Caitlin Clark, and the silence coming from those organizations is loud. Worth noting, before anything else, the Indiana Fever never issued a public correction or apology after the Angel Reese racism investigation, during which their own fan base was implicitly painted with a broad, ugly brush. No statement, no pushback. The organization went quiet and let it pass. That track record matters when evaluating how they handle controversy, and fans who paid attention last year should not have forgotten it.
This fiasco investigation. Anybody remember that? They never publicly came out and said, we don't believe our fans are racist, blah, blah, blah. Didn't do anything. They rolled over, let the activists rub their bellies last year. I have not forgotten that. I implore fans to not forget that about the Indiana Fever. Listen, I got some cousins we don't speak about that will ride at dawn. Upon request, just let me know. I got you. Some people are trying to claim.
Back to the matter at hand. The post in question, which originated on Threads before spreading across X, included language about cousins that ride at dawn upon request, offering backup to Hayes after Clark hit a contested three-pointer in her face and celebrated. Some corners of the internet have attempted to argue that this language does not constitute a threat. That argument does not hold up. Gathering a group of people to go after someone is exactly what that kind of language describes. There is no softer reading of it, and Hayes allegedly responding with "that's real" to that specific comment is, by any reasonable measure, an endorsement of it.
I got you. Some people are trying to claim this is not a threat. The hell it ain't. The hell it ain't. You're talking about getting a group of people together and beating the shit out of somebody. That is what you were talking about. Tip Hayes 3's come out and said, that's real. That is a co-signing, allegedly. That is a co-signing of said remarks. So a lot of people are wanting to know, one of your players.
So the WNBA now faces a clear test. The league spent visible energy promoting its No Space for Hate campaign. The question being raised across fan communities is whether that campaign was ever genuinely about player safety, or whether it was designed specifically to push back against critics, commentators, and social media voices the league found inconvenient. Based on what has happened here, the latter looks more accurate. The double standard being pointed out is hard to dismiss when any online troll does something objectionable while appearing to represent the inside Indiana Fever fan. The commissioner's office reportedly gets involved.
One of your players is inviting violence from fans towards Caitlin Clark. Time for you to decide if it's No Space for Hate was a gimmick or if you actually care about the safety of players. No, hell no. They were more concerned about guys like me talking shit and criticizing than they are actual, true, what seems to be threats. That's what they're more concerned about. I mean, it's a joke. Why is there a double standard in the WNBA if...
Yet a player allegedly co-signing fan language that sounds like a physical threat toward Clark appears to be generating no institutional response at all. In a standard workplace, threatening a colleague is a fireable offense. In this league, based on the pattern of the last 2 seasons, it seems to carry no consequence whatsoever. Clark was embarrassed on a shot. A logo 3 knocked down with range. It happens.
Why is there a double standard in the WNBA? If any troll does anything in the name of the Indiana Fever, the commish investigates. But Tiffany Hayes can threaten Caitlin Clark online with violence, and the WNBA does nothing. What type of precedent is this, where only violence against Clark is acceptable for the last 2 years? She's white and she's straight. That's why they're like this. They got the blinders on right now.
Every player in professional basketball, going back to Michael Jordan, has had a big shot buried in their face by an opponent. That's competition. The response is to come back harder, not to take to social media and engage with fans who are offering to show up on someone's behalf. Hayes has now handed her critics everything they need. Coming off an interaction like this one, the optics are damaging. The haters of Clark celebrating Hayes is the entire foundation of whatever attention is being directed her way right now. And that should be obvious to anyone watching.
On right now. I mean, let's be real. Let's be real. I was literally thinking that we were due for something absurd because Caitlin Clark was being threatened somewhat fairly, was being treated somewhat fairly this year. In a normal workplace, you get fired for threatening a coworker. In the WNBA, you get rewarded if you threaten Caitlin. This league is a joke.
As for the media expected to cover this, beat reporters, credentialed journalists with access to the Fever and the league, the expectation that any of them will press the organization on this publicly appears to be low. The pattern has been consistent. Criticism of Clark draws immediate coverage and institutional energy. Situations that reflect poorly on the league's handling of her safety get buried or ignored. The predicted outcome here is either complete silence from the WNBA, not a word, not an acknowledgement, or a carefully worded, vague statement that addresses no specific player, names nothing, and changes nothing. Both outcomes would confirm what a growing number of observers already believe: that accountability in this league is selectively applied, and the person least protected by it is the one most responsible for current financial survival.
Why is Golden State guard Tiffany Hayes encouraging violence against Caitlin Clark on threads? Why hasn't the WNBA stepped in? If this were Caitlin Clark engaging fans, they demand an apology. Black players are held to a different standard. You'd have Al Sharpton walking streets right now. Let's be real. I'm just going to call it like I see it. You would have Al Sharpton and that
the matchup between Caitlin Clark and Tiffany Hayes delivered exactly the kind of old-school competitive intensity that makes basketball worth watching. Two players going at each other, nothing manufactured, nothing staged, just pure on-court rivalry. Meanwhile, on the fringes of social media, certain corners of WNBA Twitter were producing genuinely unhinged content, including posts calling for teams to sign players specifically to injure Clark. That particular strain of online behavior puts even the NBA 2K community, widely considered one of the more toxic spaces in sports gaming, to shame. On the court, though, Hayes came out swinging. She hacked Clark repeatedly throughout the game. And to be fair, Clark did get away with more push-offs than usual.
And that Fugazi attorney crop out there, and Jamel Hill, and ESPN, they would all demand justice. We know. Tiffany Hayes, you got embarrassed. Move on. Logo 3 in your face in front of millions and millions. Look, every player in the league's had some kind of, in this league, the NBA, even Michael Jordan got.
The thing is, was when referees allow a player to be physically mauled without calling fouls, the natural response from that player, extending arms to create separation, has to be tolerated too. The deeper frustration with Clark's push-off habit is that it does not even help her. She gains almost nothing from it. It is purely a reflex, which makes it all the more maddening to watch go unchecked when the defensive contact that triggers it also goes unacknowledged. Hayes had genuine bright moments. A step-back three early in the game was legitimate, clean footwork, well executed, and delivered with clear intent to send a message.
After the game,
she would never get to play in games.
If they're going to start calling fouls in there, she would never get playing games. Tip Hayes hacked the shit out of Caitlin. In the defense of Caitlin, Caitlin did get away with more push-offs today than she normally does. But as a referee, if you're going to let her get mauled, you have to allow the push-off. That's what I was saying at the start of the year when Caitlin was getting called for the offensive fouls and push-offs. I'm like, if the referees are going to call people for hand check.
Clark was on the receiving end and knew it. What followed was a back and forth that escalated steadily throughout the game, with both players getting in each other's space, exchanging words, and competing at a level that made the game genuinely entertaining. Clark's response, hitting a shot in Hayes' face and jawing right back, was the version of Clark that tends to produce her best basketball. When the game becomes personal, something sharpens. Misha Hines-Allen stepped in at one point to prevent things from boiling over, which was the right call. But the intensity never really dropped. What the game was not, however, was a targeting situation or anything resembling genuine malice.
Like, if the referees are going to call people for hand checking you at the halfway line, then obviously you can't push off. And I think Caitlin doesn't even get separation of the push-offs. It's actually frustrating. It really, really frustrates me in general when it comes down to Caitlin with the push-offs, because I'm like, she actually doesn't get anything from the push-offs. She does it out of habit. That is the most frustrating thing about it, is that, like, she does it out of habit. But, like,
both players were competing hard and talking trash. That is standard basketball. The attempt by some to frame Hayes as villainous for getting in Clark's face ignores the fact that Clark was equally in Hayes' face. It was mutual. The same energy that gets celebrated when Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren go at each other. Rooted in Wembanyama's well-documented frustration over Holmgren receiving a tournament MVP that many felt should have gone elsewhere, is the exact same energy on display here. Competitive dislike is a feature of elite sport, not a scandal. Clark finished with 5 technical fouls and a flagrant that, by most accounts, had no business being called.
Does it out of habit. But, like, Caitlin Clark obviously getting into it immediately through this whole game. Like, they were already getting into it a little bit. Tip Hayes was cooking Caitlin. This was a, like, old-fashioned 2 players going at each other. Pure basketball, shit talk. Like, this is what you want to see. So, Tip Hayes is trying to guard Caitlin. Boom. Caitlin, easy. I don't know what she's calling for. Caitlin got hacked before that, by the way. There's no contact there at all. But, like, immediately, Caitlin Clark from the...
Hayes, for her part, is widely regarded among longtime WNBA fans as the league's most prominent flopper, a reputation that makes her sudden popularity in certain circles, purely because she was going at Clark, fairly amusing. Hayes also came out of a retirement she had held for 3 years and has reportedly earned more since returning than she did across her entire career before stepping away. She followed up the game by going on a blocking spree on social media, which added a layer of comedy to the whole episode. The reason Clark took it so personally traces back to that first quarter step-back three. Hayes hit the shot, then used a hand gesture in Clark's direction, similar in nature to one Clark herself has used in previous games. Whether that was the specific trigger or the combination of physical play and trash talk throughout, the result was the same.
Caitlin Clark from the logo here. Tip Hayes, I think, had scored in the previous possession. Caitlin Clark goes into that, and you see Tip Hayes during this. Look, watch Tip Hayes. She immediately makes contact with her. That could have been, like, I don't think it should have been. She had already landed, but, like, I'm sorry, the bump there, that could have been a rebounding foul. That could have, and in the WNBA, that's an and one. In Europe, that's not an and one. In Europe, that's not an and one if you foul somebody after the shot. But in
Clark locked in, and a locked-in Clark is a harder Clark to guard. Hayes played well. That part deserves acknowledgement. She was not outclassed from the opening tip. She cooked Clark on multiple possessions and competed at a high level throughout. Clark just happened to be better when the game was on the line. That is what separated the two, nothing more.
in the WNBA, that absolutely could have been, and probably should have been an and one, given the way they've been calling, given the way they tend to call that play. That being said, we got to give credit where credit's due to Caitlin Clark, because this is where you're like, okay, yeah, this is a fucking demon. This is the player that we wanted to see. Washington woke it up, but Caitlin, you like that? Get out of my face! Come on, get it! And Maisha Hines-Allen immediately steps in to stop anything from happening. Like, this is a big thing. Like, Caitlin absolutely cooking Tip Hayes. That being said, to act like Tip Hayes didn't cook Caitlin with that step back earlier on in the game. Like, Tip Hayes absolutely cooked Caitlin. Absolutely cooked Caitlin here. And like, I gotta say, like, we're not gonna pretend that Tip Hayes didn't get hers. Caitlin won the game in the end, but Tip Hayes absolutely got hers. So but yeah, this was a big game. This was a big game. And honestly, when it comes to Tiffany Hayes, this is kind of what you want. Big game. And honestly, when it comes to Tiffany Hayes, this is kind of what you want to see from Caitlin Clark. But this was it was disrespect from Tiffany Hayes. She was getting in Caitlin Clark's face. She was talking shit. The whole team were not sure what Tip Hayes on, but Caitlin Clark got 5 texts flagrant. And yeah, she got the most nonsense flagrant foul I've ever seen. The most nonsense flagrant foul. But yeah, Caitlin Clark's no longer show. Bringing back Iowa Caitlin. Tip Hayes, you're famous now. Like, I don't think people understand. Like, Tip Hayes is known as being a flopper.